Welcome everybody. Alright, so in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to make a hoplite shield, or kind of a shield in general. Now, a lot of people tend to request this, and so I'm making them a tutorial about it. And it's actually quite simple to do. And on top of that, if you don't like games, you'll actually learn quite a bit in this small tutorial on how to use, for example, just simple modeling stuff. Okay, so start up a new file, pretty simple, and I'm just going to go and delete this here. Now, what we need to do is need to go to create, and we need to go and create a circle. Okay, now here at the bottom here, before you touch anything else, because you don't get to go back to this for the most part, is you need to find how detailed the circle is going to be. Now again, the more detailed and the more smooth we make it will depend on how many faces we have, or in this case we have vertices. So the more vertices, the smoother it will look, but the more costly it will be. So again, if you're making this for a mobile device, you want to make sure that it is not a lot of vertices. If you're making this for, kind of a tablet, you can have more vertices. And then this goes up all the way through, depending on what console you're making it for. If you're making it for PC or Mac or on the computer, right up to the PlayStation 4 and Xbox 360. I'm going to leave it at 32 just because that's a pretty good number. However, you could probably get away with more, maybe even twice as many of these as 64, if you wanted to make something. If you wanted to make something for, let's say, the Xbox 360. But let's just do 32 here. Let's zoom in, and you can see here that we have, nothing too much here. Let's tab into edit mode, and what we can do here is we can actually push E and simply extrude this, and let's constrain this to the Z axis here. Okay, so here we go. We have this nice little we have this nice little we can extrude all the vertices here, and if I just do that again, push Z to constrain it on there, we have the bottom or the base of our shield. It's pretty simple. We'll just take a look at this here. Something more like that. Okay, that's probably good. If you push 1 on the numpad, you can go and you can simply do that here. And I think that's probably good. And you remember you can move this up or down, and this doesn't affect, it only affects the size of it, not the vertices. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is we need to kind of scale this in. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to push E to extrude and then just right click right away. Then you're going to go ahead and push S, and this way you can kind of make something, you can go in. Now, for the most part, if you look at a lot of these hoplite shields, there's several ways we can do that here, but we'll just simply do that here. Okay, we're going to do the exact same thing here. We're just going to push E to extrude, lock it on the Z axis, and we're just going to move it up ever so slightly. Let's push 1 on the numpad, and then simply just move this down, because we're not going to make this too big. Okay, something like that should work. Now, I should also point out that this is going to be a huge shield at this point. And the one thing you want to make sure that you do is you need to make sure you scale your, if you want to put this in a different place, like for example Unity 3D or the Unreal Engine, you have to scale it accordingly. Remember that these shields here are not supposed to be that big, but you can always model it. And then if you tab into object mode and scale it, you can make it as big or as small as you want. All right, so let's just tab back into edit mode. And now that we have this here, we're going to push E to extrude, right click again, and then scale it in. Now we're going to go all the way, almost all the way to the center here. Okay, just like that. Now here, we can just move this up a bit. Okay. Move this up. Now there's two things you can do here. Okay, there's two things. I'm just going to undo that here. So we just we'll push 1 on the numpad, and you can move it up like this, and that's not necessarily that bad. Okay. The other thing you can do is you can actually go to Tools, and you can go to Loop Cut here, and it knows that it's Blender. In fact, knows that it's a circular primitive, and it will loop cut accordingly. Okay. Now you're probably asking why this is important. Well, we can actually do two things here. We can actually even raise the middle part only, Or we can just raise this in two different sides here, and that way it might actually make it look a little bit better. Now what we need to do is we need to go and we need to kind of make sure we select all these vertices here. There is a way to select all of this loop around here, although sometimes I've found it to be unreliable. Not that it doesn't work, it does work, but I've actually been doing a tutorial and the tutorial has been going super well, and then for some reason it just doesn't work. Alright, so now that we have selected all this, we can actually go back to number 1 and we can move it up like this, okay? And you're thinking, okay, well that seems a little bit silly. We can just move that up here. Well, it does look a little bit better. The other thing you can do now is you can just go and raise this circle here up to a different height. Okay, and there we go. I'm just going to take a couple seconds here to do it all. Now, one thing that I've noticed is sometimes there's an easy technological shortcut, like for example selecting all these at once, and other times there isn't. One thing that I do is if I know it's kind of flaky, so I'm just going to do this here, and I'm going to move it up just a little bit more. So the angle here, as you can see, is a little bit different from here. But going back to the other story is that if there's something that I know will work 100% of the time that might take 10% longer, I'll do that. All right. So you can see here that if I move this down to about here, you can see that the angles are the same. They can either the purpose of this middle cut here is to either move it, if we go hit 1 on the numpad again, we can either move it more or less, okay? And sometimes subtlety is a good thing. So even something like this where we have an angle here and then here, that actually works out quite well, okay? Now there's a couple things we need to do here. This actually looks like a pretty cool shield. There is no bottom to this, which we'll talk about. Another thing we need to do is add in some kind of button in here, right? And this tutorial is getting a little bit long, so I'll end this and I'll see you guys in the next tutorial.